It has been a stressful year. We are constantly bombarded with things to make us stressed and confused by the media. So, this time I decided to make something of a more positive note, to show you that the mystic does not always stare into the abyss, but sometimes comes back with the gospel, or good news. Greetings, immortals. I'm your host Simon. Welcome back to the Library of Gnosis. What is a divine experience? To me, I think the Egyptians knew that music was a key to a profound unlocking of the human mind, a gateway for the soul to make contact with the gods. What does a divine experience feel like? It feels like home. It feels very familiar and safe. It feels simple, yet Leviathan in scale, like a memory of a long-lost home. Yet it feels as close as all around you, and it is inescapable. It feels like this is the dream, and that is the reality. It also has a very erotic element to it. I'm sure the gods got around. It is an inescapable fact of what reality is. I think we try to put reality in a box, but the divine teaches us the grandness and limitlessness of the kingdom of God. To me, the art of the Egyptians seemed to evoke the places, the palaces of the gods. Is that what they call heaven? Hasn't that always been the place of the gods, in the heavens? Nothing else compares to it. I don't think you can recall heaven without, in some sense, actually being there, in touch with it. Very much like this is the dream, and that is the reality. Just like Chuang Tzu and the butterfly. Chuang Tzu was a philosopher in ancient China, who one night went to sleep and dreamed that he was a butterfly. He dreamt that he was flying around from flower to flower, and while he was dreaming, he felt free, blown about by the breeze, hither and thither. He was quite sure that he was a butterfly. But when he awoke, he realized that he had just been dreaming, and that he was really Chuang Tzu, dreaming he was the butterfly. But then Chuang Tzu asked himself the following question: was I Chuang Tzu dreaming I was a butterfly? Or am I now really a butterfly dreaming that I am Chuang Tzu? It is a place you see with your third eye. As the third eye or pineal gland looks upwards at a 45-degree angle, constantly gazing at the heavens. I don't know if you can enter heaven alive. Was that what Jesus did, the living God? To me, it feels like there are many gods, a divine council. It doesn't feel all that serious, maybe not the right word, but just like in Hinduism, the divine play is more sincere and joyful, like the board games of the gods. I think we focus too much on the high god and forget about the other gods. I think the ancient Egyptians made contact with the gods in some way, probably through altering their consciousness, which they were masters of. They have true insight in the Elysian fields. I'm sure this is a place mystics see in their visions, if they really are mystics. I mean, it is spoken of. I think that what is satanic is that which is trying to pull us down to materialism, to rein us in and limit God, which is a paradox. You can't limit something which is infinite consciousness, cause the thing that would be trying to do the limiting would be less thing of that which has created it. In Hinduism, they have the concept of multiple levels of heaven. Thoth speaks of a realm above. Thoth the Atlantean who ascended to godhood, as above, so below, as below, so above. The Emerald Tablets. That is why it is said he created himself. They added a new player to the game, a human ascending like the Hermes thrice greatest. I really think there is something to alchemy, the perfection of the human soul. I tell you the truth, anyone who believes in me will do the same works I have done, and even greater works, because I am going to be with the Father. John 14:12. Would make sense if there were 7 heavens and 7 chakras, 7 steps in the alchemical process. The number shows up a lot in the Bible, supposed to be a divine number. Why wouldn't the gods be able to make life? To hold the heavens together, we call it dark matter, but it removes the conscious force applied to the universe in our pursuit for materialism. Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. Alan Wilson Watts. I think the word awe is a fitting word. We have these words that describe the kingdom of the divine. How do you explain a mystic vision? It is a very personal experience. I've got more experience, of course, that led me to certain conclusions, but I'm not sure I feel comfortable sharing it at this moment. I just wanted to make this video to cheer people up and try to describe a certain feeling, or at least how I have experienced it. It would be extremely interesting to hear about what you others have to say about your own mystical experiences. Please leave it down in the comments below. I think words do disservice to it. How do you explain the realms of the gods? I think we can look at the architecture of Egypt for this. As above, so below. I think we can look at the golden age spoken of in Greek tales. The Milky Way galaxy and Orion's belt being mirrored on the ground in Egypt with the Nile River and the pyramids. And, to quote a very interesting article by howandwise.com, false doors in ancient Egypt tombs could have been a gateway to visit gods after death. One of the most common elements that one would find while visiting ancient Egyptian tombs is the false doors, also known as corridors. As the name suggests itself, the door leads to nowhere. They are imaginary passages for the ka, an element of the soul between the world of the living and the spirits and deities. The deity of the deceased could interact with the world of the living either by passing through the door or receiving offerings through it. That is why it is very common to find these false passages on the side of coffins in royal and non-royal tombs, beginning with Egypt's Old Kingdom. False doors are believed to have been created in the 4th millennium BCE in Mesopotamia and later adopted by the builders of ancient Egypt. They were the common elements within the Temple of Egypt during the New Kingdom. Besides, they were often associated with a chapel known as the Hearing Ear, which was generally located in the outer wall near the back of the temple, close to the sanctuary. Interestingly, it is said that these chapels allowed those outside the temple to directly communicate with gods that could hear them through the false door. The ancient Egyptians believed that life on earth was only one part of an eternal journey, which ended not in death, but in everlasting joy. When one's body failed, the soul did not die with it, but continued on toward an afterlife, where one received back all that one had thought lost. One was born on earth through the benevolence of the gods and the deities known as the 7 Hathors, then decreed one's fate after birth. The soul then went on to live as good a life as it could in the body it had been given for a time. When death came, it was only a transition to another realm where one were justified by the gods, and one would live eternally in a paradise known as the Field of Reeds. The Field of Reeds, sometimes called the Field of Offerings, known to Egyptians as Aru, was a mirror image of one's life on earth. The aim of every Egyptian was to make that life worth living eternally, and as far as the records indicated, they did their very best at that. In fact, there is ample evidence that the Egyptians played a great deal. The board game of Senet was extremely popular, representing one's journey through the life of eternity. Music, dance, and carefully choreographed gymnastics were part of the major festivals, and one of the chief concepts valued by the Egyptians was gratitude for the life they had been given and everything in it. The gods were considered one's closest friends and benefactors who imbued every day with meaning. Hathor was always close at hand as the lady of the sycamore tree, a tree goddess who provided shade and comfort, but was at the same time presiding over the heavenly Nile River. The Milky Way was a cosmic force, as Lady of the Necropolis opened the door for the departed soul to the afterlife. She was also present at every festival, wedding, and funeral, the Lady of Drunkenness, who encouraged people to lighten their hearts by drinking beer. The other gods and goddesses of Egypt were also depicted as intimately concerned with the life and welfare of human beings. During one's earthly journey, they provided the living with all of their needs, and after death, they appeared to comfort and guide the soul. Goddesses like Selket, Nephthys, and Kebet guided and protected the newly arrived souls in the afterlife. Kebet even brought them cool, refreshing water. Anubis, Thoth, and Osiris brought them to judgment and rewarded or punished them. The popular image of the Egyptians as death-obsessed could not be more wrong. If anything, the ancient Egyptians were obsessed with life and living it abundantly. The scholar James F. Romano notes, quote, "In surveying the evidence that survives from antiquity, we are left with the overall impression that most Egyptians loved life and were willing to overlook its hardships. Indeed, the perfect afterlife was merely an ideal version of the earthly existence. Only the travails and petty annoyances that bothered them in their lifetimes would be missing in the afterlife. All else, they hoped, would be as it was on earth." In general, the false doors was placed on the west wall of the offering chamber at the back of the tomb, as the west was associated with death and the afterlife. The tomb contained 2 false doors, one for the owner and another for his spouse. Each and every architectural element in ancient Egypt had a specific reason that was associated with a system of beliefs in the structure of the world, both of mortal and dead. Ancient Egyptians strongly believed that death is not the end of the human existence. The systematic organization of the tomb of the deceased depicts the process of the afterlife. For example, the false doors of Anchises reads, "The scribe of the house of the gods documents, the stolist of Anubis, follower of the Great One, follower of Chenet, Anchises." End quote. Bear in mind that in writing this, I was not aware of any of this about the Egyptian afterlife. Not from earthly experiences, at least. But I kind of feel it out. I think synchronicities are sometimes the gods speaking to you. Carl Jung viewed this from a psychologist standpoint, but once again the scope seems limited. We are good at trying to limit things, but you can't put the divine in a box. Neti neti is a Sanskrit expression which means not this, not that, or neither this nor that. It is found in the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, and consists of an analytic meditation helping a person to understand the nature of the Brahman by negating everything that is not Brahman. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Aru, ancient Egyptian reeds or rushes, known also as the Field of Reeds, is the heavenly paradise where Osiris rules. It has been described as the Ka, a part of the soul of the Nile Delta. The ancient Egyptians believed that the soul resides in the heart, and so, upon death, the weighing of the heart occurred. Each human heart is weighed on a giant scale against an ostrich feather, which represents the concept of Ma'at. Those souls which balance the scales are allowed to start a long and perilous journey to the Field of Reeds, where they will exist in pleasure for all eternity. Hearts heavy with evil tip and fall into the crocodilian jaws of the demon Amit. After this, quote, second death, the soul is doomed to restlessness in Duat. The Duat is the realm of the dead in ancient Egyptian mythology. It has been represented in hieroglyphs as a star in a circle. The god Osiris was believed to be the lord of the underworld. He was the first mummy as depicted in the Osiris myth, and he personifies rebirth and life after death. The underworld was also the residence of various other gods along with Osiris. The geography of Duat is similar in outline to the world the Egyptians knew. There are realistic features like rivers, islands, fields, lakes, mounds, and caverns. But there are also fantastic lakes of fire, walls of iron, and trees of turquoise. In the Book of Two Ways, a coffin text, there is even a map-like image of the Duat. In contrast to the Egyptian pyramids, which focus on the celestial realm, the coffin text emphasizes the subterranean elements of the afterlife, ruled by the deity of Osiris, in a place called the Duat. An Osiris afterlife is offered to everyone, and the deceased is even referred to as the Osiris, insert name. This subterranean realm is described as being filled with threatening beings, traps, and snares, which the deceased must contend. The spell in the coffin texts allowed the deceased to protect themselves against these dangers, and from dying a second death. A new theme recorded in the coffin text is the notion that all people will be judged by Osiris and his council according to their deeds in life. The text alludes to the use of a balance, which became the pivotal moment of judgment in the later Book of the Dead. The text addressed common fears of the living, such as having to do manual labor, which spells allowed the deceased to avoid these unpleasant tasks. The combined ritual actions intended as protection, expression of expiration for a blessed existence after death, and of the transformation and transmigration of the Ba and Ach, so on. In addition, there are also descriptions of the land of the dead, its landscape and inhabitants. These include the Seket Hoptep, field of offerings or peace, the path of Rosatu, and the abode of Osiris. The souls who qualify undergo a long journey and face many perils before reaching Aru. Once they arrive, they enter through a series of gates. The exact number of gates varies according to the sources. Some say 15, some 21. They are uniformly described as guarded by evil demons armed with knives. Aru usually was placed in the east where the sun rises, and described as boundless reed fields, like those of the earthly Nile Delta. This ideal hunting and farming ground allowed the souls here to live for eternity. More precisely, Aru was envisaged as a series of islands covered in fields of rushes. The part where Silas later dwelt is sometimes known as the Field of Offerings. At the risk of repeating myself, I just wanted to create this video to give people some hope and spread a mature state of consciousness. Maybe I am all alone in feeling this way, but I think the truth is hard to get around. Everybody just skips the other gods and goes for the one god, but I think people are rushing it a bit and compressing the universe. Well, this video is already very long, but I will try to explore this topic more if you want to. But I hope to leave you all with joyfulness. Masters are ye of your destiny, free to take or reject at will. Take ye the power, take ye the wisdom, shine as a light among the children of men. Emerald Tablets. Thank you for listening. See you next time, mortal. Remember to hit that bell button to stay notified. Subscribe for more Red Pill content. Do give it a like if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share it. If you want to support my work, you can find me on Patreon at Library of Gnosis. You can find me on YouTube, Facebook, and Bitchute at Library of Gnosis. The audio versions of my broadcasts are available on Spotify as a podcast at Library of Gnosis.